relationship has been one of the closest with the UK. And it hasn't mattered who was in place, whether it's a Labour government or a Tory government. It hasn't mattered. We've always been very united. There's always been a closeness in terms of engagement. So to me, I jumped in when you expressed your view because, yes, I find it quite startling and shocking that of all of our allies and partners and friends, that the response has been a very tepid one, to say the least.
What's your assessment of the patience of the US administration? How long does this need to take in their minds? And equally important, what is the patience of the US public, who were promised in an election campaign that this is the end of the real juxtaposition against the interventionism of George W. Bush, Obama, Biden. This was going to be different, and now here we are starting something anew. So it doesn't feel to me as if this can be an indefinite project.
Well, I'll start with the president. The president has been asked that question, and his response to your question is, it will be as long as it takes, because we see this as a very direct threat, a threat to us, a threat to our allies, excuse me, our allies and partners in the region, and also clearly to Israel in this case. So he has said, and just very recently, there are no time limits. It will be as long as it takes. When the military and the Pentagon has been asked this question, and they've been giving briefings, the comment has been that it will take weeks. And I think I have heard in the range of like 4 to maybe 6, maybe 8 weeks, but weeks. So on the time factor, I think I've stated it as to what has been said from the administration's response to your question. Secondly, in terms of the public, I think there are two important factors here. Let me mention the one that maybe is most significant and gets kind of lost here. It's interesting, when polled, the American public, over 75% have said they are very concerned about Iran having nuclear weapons. They're very fearful of that threat, number one. And then also, secondly, in this context, also over 79%, I believe that's the figure, I'm just in this case, basically say that they also have a great concern and, well, they have support here for ensuring that terrorism and the issue of the activity of proxies, that is contained, if not eliminated. So I start with that because, yes, on the question about, which I will mention in a moment, about the polling, but it's worth noting a very sizable amount, a number of Americans are very much concerned about the threat of nuclear weapons posed by Iran having it and what Iran will do with it. And then also its significant activities and sponsorship of terrorist activities and what that would portend for us. Having said that, then in terms of the polling at this time, yes, it's about, from what I've seen from some of the polls that have come out, in fact, just yesterday, there's concern about the activities here, the operation. Americans take note that there are no American boots on the ground, as you pointed out. This is air. This is jointly with Israel in this case. And there's concern about that. How long will this take? What impact will this have? So why do I present both? Because there's a bit of a conflict here. There's the great concern about nuclear weapons and terrorism up front, but then also the concern about how long will this last and what will this mean?
Yeah. I'm keen to get your thoughts on a rapidly changing world order. And if I can invite you to comment on two things. Firstly, um, that the UK has not been by America's side in a way that is really quite startling. I'm not sure I imagined I would see quite such a divide between London and Washington at such a
No,
moment
nor would
of
I, nor would
national.
I say that immediately to you, nor would I.
Yeah, and I'm embarrassed by that, to be honest with you. And whilst I thought it was not particularly diplomatic language, I'm afraid the president had an awfully good point when he said what he said about Prime Minister Starmer in the Oval Office the other day. Um, how how permanent in the minds of the US public could this all become if America, if the perhaps they no longer think the US needs allies, it's America first, America pursues its interests, and that's that, and therefore they don't care, or do they care, and are they actually going to be quite angry at the countries like the UK who have not come with them? That's the first thing I'd love your thoughts on. And secondly, it is extraordinary how utterly irrelevant the UN is given what is going on now. And by comparison to when you were in the State Department in 2003, when it was all about, I mean, the US reserved the right to go it alone if it needed to, but there was huge effort put into the UN, and yet that is now invisible. And it just says to me that the tectonic plates are shifting rapidly.
Well, yes, on the latter immediately, to say that there's really no engagement that I see, and so I agree with your point relative to the United Nations. Secondly, with regard to our relationship has been one of the closest with the UK, and it hasn't mattered who was in place, whether it's a Labour government or a Tory government. It hasn't mattered. We've always been very united. There's always been a closeness in terms of engagement. So to me, I jumped in when you expressed your view because, yes, I find it quite startling and shocking that of all of our allies and partners and friends, that the response has been a very tepid one, to say the least. The position that was taken that we're not engaged, and then, well, yes, you can use two of our bases, a very far one out in, I believe, Diego Garcia, and then
Mm.
another one. And in that case, it was only for defensive purposes. I believe that was stated. So it's very striking and disappointing. And I think, President Trump certainly stated that, how he feels. As to the American public, I believe there's probably some disappointment, of course. I have not seen specific polling or reaction to that effect, but I can tell you in my own community, meaning the foreign policy and national security community, yes. Because again, we've been united, and even at times when there have been disagreements about maybe approaches, we've worked through that of, okay, how do you deal with that in a way where you have comfort and we have comfort? So here, all I can say is that's one of shock, disappointment, and what does that portend going forward? It's very concerning in terms of allies and friends and partners.
I wonder though. I've been on the inside of these discussions in my 5 years as a British Defence Minister, and fundamental to going with the US at moments like this is the effort that the US puts into explaining why it is planning to do something to its allies and partners, the intelligence sharing, and the sort of the US has always, in my experience, rolled the pitch very effectively and made sure that your allies and partners around the world are in your mind as much as we possibly can be, given security classifications and the ultimate, caveat that you'll do what you want to do. But you have to value your coalitions to invest in that pitch rolling. And I wonder if this White House almost revels in not valuing those coalitions.
Well, I think I will say this. I think here I wouldn't put it that way. I do think that the fact that Netanyahu was in the United States, the fact that this time was selected, the commentary that was made was that it was that intel was found about the meeting of the 40 leaders and Khomeini that took place. So they acted very quickly. To my knowledge, from what has been said, I believe that our State Department and Secretary Rubio, to my knowledge, was engaged and has tried to be engaged towards that end. So where it counts, meaning, and I, having worked at the State Department for quite a while, no loss at the National Security Council, here in this case, and he's both. So in that case, to my knowledge, he did engage. And on the timing, I don't know. But also, I think that was also because there was very quick action that was taken. But as far as I know, there was diplomatically outreach to partners, to friends. So I wouldn't say, because you use the word reveling in it, I think that's maybe not fair. I do think that Secretary Rubio has really been very earnest, has worked very, very hard at such engagement. And so from that standpoint, as I said, to my knowledge, he has been doing that. And not just only with those in like the UK, but also certainly with those in the Middle East who have been very concerned about what's happening next, and those that are being targeted right now, like Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, and so forth.
Mm. We've only got a minute or two left, and I just want to invite you to finish by um, this could be the most consequential foreign policy agenda pursued by a US president for decades, for a generation or more. And he has, he's got Venezuela on the go and is asserting US hegemony in the Western Hemisphere. He is seeking to reframe the United States relationship with Russia. He is taking on Iran. He is reshaping the US's relationship with Europe and NATO. And he is seeking to recast and drive forward the US's competition with China. Has he the bandwidth and the patience to do all of those things? And if he pulls it off, will he deserve to be regarded as the man that effectively shaped the rest of the 21st century?
I would say this has been a very significant time of change. In terms of traditional approaches, they have not been traditional. In fact, we've witnessed in just the first year of the administration and now into the second, dramatic shifts in terms of, if you will, sort of frameworks and concepts that were in place and which the Trump administration has pushed aside and has strived to recraft. For example, you very well know, given the NATO summit that took place last year, the 5%, the dramatic push for burden sharing. I mean, every president for decades has tried to do that. And then there at the summit, there were pledges. Everyone except for Spain in this regard made that pledge and action. And so dramatic change economically in terms of the imposition of tariffs and trying to rebalance in terms of imports into the United States and exports of our products outward. I think in terms of the action in Venezuela, very, very striking, the action that was taken. By the way, there had been many who had been pushing past presidents to take such action. And here, Trump did take it. But by the way, I want to underscore, it's noteworthy, he took such action, but he also stated the importance of negotiating first and gave that opportunity, in this case, to Maduro, who didn't take it. And then after countless efforts of stating that, it didn't happen, moved with force. Often the president talks about Reagan. I worked in the Reagan administration, talks about peace through strength. And here he's trying to achieve peace, stability through a show of strength and use of force. And now let me end with this. In terms of this military operation, it's quite significant. In his own remarks, Trump said, no one was willing to take this very strong action and do it and actually do it. So, yes, I could go on with countless other ways in where there have been major shifts, and it has only been a year and a few months where many concepts, frameworks, means of operating have been uprooted. And I think it goes back to, I will end on that note, a peace through strength, which he has often referenced, undergirds the approach. Being part of the Reagan administration, that is one that we abided by. And actually, I believe there are countless examples of where that was not just only stated, but also operated on.
Thank you so much. And I realized as you were answering my question that I missed out arguably the hardest task of all, which is that he's concurrently having a go at the Israel-Palestine issue too. It is these are consequential times, and your analysis is much appreciated. I'm James Heapy. You've been listening to Superpowers, the future of global security, here on the Trump Report. For more of the fantastic geopolitical commentary that you get not only from our guests here on Superpowers, but also from Frontline and the Trump Report, do make sure that you subscribe to the channel. But otherwise, we will see you for more Superpowers next week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.